Ingersoll's lecture on Individuality. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The lectures of Colonel Robert Greene Ingersoll. Lecture number 4, Ingersoll's lecture on Individuality, an arraignment of the Church. His soul was like a star and dwelt apart. On every hand are the enemies of individuality and mental freedom. Custom meets us at the cradle and leaves us only at the tomb. Our first questions are answered by ignorance, and our last by superstition. We are pushed and dragged by countless hands along the beaten track, and our entire training can be summed up in the word suppression. Our desire to have a thing or to do a thing is considered as conclusive evidence that we ought to do it. At every turn we run not to have it, and ought not against a cherubim and a flaming sword, guarding some entrance to the Eden of our desire. We are allowed to investigate all subjects in which we feel no particular interest, and to express the opinions of the majority with the utmost freedom. We are taught that liberty of speech should never be carried to the extent of contradicting the dead witnesses of a popular superstition. Society offers continual rewards for self-betrayal, and they are nearly all earned and claimed, and some are paid. We have all read accounts of Christian gentlemen remarking when about to be hanged how much better it would have been for them if they had only followed a mother's advice. But after all, how fortunate it is for the world that the maternal advice has not been followed. How lucky it is for us all that it is somewhat unnatural for a human being to obey. Universal obedience is universal stagnation. Disobedience is one of the conditions of progress. Select any age of the world, and tell me what would have been the effect of implicit obedience. Suppose the church had had absolute control of the human mind at any time. Would not the word liberty and progress have been blotted from the human speech? In defiance of advice, the world has advanced. Suppose the astronomers had controlled the science of astronomy. Suppose the doctors had controlled the science of medicine. Suppose kings had been left to fix the form of government. Suppose our fathers had taken the advice of Paul, who was subject to the powers that be, because they are ordained of God. Suppose the church could control the world today. We would go back to chaos and old night. Philosophy would be branded as infamous. Science would again press its pale and thoughtful face against the prison bars, and round the limbs of liberty would climb the bigot's flame. It is a blessed thing that in every age someone has had individuality enough and courage enough to stand by his own convictions. Someone who had the grit to say his say. I believe it was Magellan who said, "The church says the earth is flat, but I have seen its shadow on the moon, and I have more confidence even in a shadow than in the church." On the prow of his ship were disobedience, defiance, scorn, and success. The trouble with most people is that they bow to what is called authority. They have a certain reverence for the old because it is old. They think a man is better for being dead, especially if he has been dead a long time, and that the forefathers of their nation were the greatest and best of all mankind. All these things they implicitly believe because it is popular and patriotic, and because they were told so when very small, and remember distinctly of hearing mother read it out of a book. And they are all willing to swear that mother was a good woman. It is hard to overestimate the influence of early training in the direction of superstition. You first teach children that a certain book is true, that it was written by God himself, that to question its truth is sin, and to deny it is a crime, and that should they die without believing that book, they will be forever damned, without benefit of clergy. The consequence is that before they read that book, they believe it to be true. When they do read, their minds are wholly unfitted to investigate its claim. They accept it as a matter of course. In this way reason is overcome, the sweet instincts of humanity are blotted from the heart, and while reading its infamous pages, even justice throws aside her scales, shrieking for revenge, and charity, with bloody hands, applauds a deed of murder. In this way we are taught that the revenge of man is the justice of God, that mercy is not the same everywhere. In this way the ideas of our race have been subverted. In this way we have made tyrants, bigots, and inquisitors. In this way the brain of man has become a kind of palimpsest, upon which, and over the writings of nature, superstition has scribbled her countless lies. Our great trouble is that most teachers are dishonest. They teach as certainties those things concerning which they entertain doubts. They do not say, "We think this is so," but "We know this is so." They do not appeal to the reason of the pupil, but they command his faith. They keep all doubts to themselves. They do not explain, they assert. All this is infamous. In this way you make Christians, but you cannot make men. You cannot make women. You can make followers, but no leaders. Disciples, but no Christs. You may promise power, honor, and happiness to all those who will blindly follow, but you cannot keep your promise. An Eastern monarch said to a hermit, "Come with me and I will give you power." "I have all the power that I know how to use," replied the hermit. "Come," said the king, "I will give you wealth." "I have no wants that money can supply." "I will give you honor." "Ah, honor cannot be given, it must be earned." "Come," said the king, making a last appeal, "and I will give you happiness." "No," said the man of solitude, "there is no happiness without liberty, and he who follows cannot be free." "You shall have your liberty too." "Then I will stay." And all the king's courtiers thought the hermit a fool. Now and then somebody examines, and in spite of all, keeps up his manhood and has courage to follow where his reason leads. Then the pious get together and repeat wise saws, and exchange knowing nods, and most prophetic winks. The stupidly wise sit owl like on the dead limbs of the tree of knowledge, and solemnly hoot. Wealth sneers, and fashion laughs, and respectability passes on the other side, and scorn points with all her skinny fingers, and like the snakes of superstition writhe and hiss, and slander lends her tongue, and infamy her brand, perjury her oath, and the law its power, and bigotry tortures, and the church kills. The church hates a thinker precisely for the same reason that a robber dislikes a sheriff, or that a thief despises the prosecuting witness. Tyranny likes courtiers, flatterers, followers, fawners, and superstition wants believers, disciples, zealots, hypocrites, and subscribers. The church demands worship, the very thing that man should give to no being, human or divine. To worship another is to degrade yourself. Worship is awe and dread and vague fear and blind hope. It is the spirit of worship that elevates the one and degrades the many, and manacles even its own hands. The spirit of worship is the spirit of tyranny. The worshiper always regrets that he is not the worshiped. We should all remember that the intellect has no knees, and that whatever the attitude of the body may be, the brain